Back in the mid-70s, my dad felt God urging him to quit his job here and move out to Bangladesh, which was one of the poorest countries in the world at the time. And I remember once, when I was about 12 or 13, my parents parked their car with me and two of my friends in it outside a shop in the city centre. And as would always happen, suddenly these kids just approached the car from all angles looking for our spare change, which would essentially be enough for them to feed themselves and their brothers and sisters for the day. And I don't know why I did it. Maybe it was to impress my friends or to get a laugh out of them, or maybe it was just out of cruelty. But I took out my wallet and I took out a 5 taka note, which was enough to feed one of these beggars for a whole day. And I ripped it up right in the face of this little girl who couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old. I wish I could go back to that moment. Not so I could go back and not do the wrong thing or go back and do the right thing that I wish I could have done. But because in that moment, my actions were an overflow of how I felt about that little girl. My heart was dead and numb and blind to her heartbreak and her plight and her poverty. She wasn't a person to me, she was an object to be used for my amusement. I was completely separate, completely blind to who she was and what she needed, because I was so caught up in my insecurity and my desire to impress my friends. It wasn't just that what I did was wrong. It's that life is much bigger and more complex than that. It's like it can't just be plotted on right or wrong. My action was not just an action, it was an overflow of the person that I was in that moment. And we can choose whether that person is further from who God wants us to be, or closer still. It's like the band Switchfoot singing one of their songs. The tension is here between how it is and how it should be, between who you are and who you could be. Each one of us lives with this tension. We look around at the world and the state that it's in and we say, this isn't the way that it should be. And maybe there are times when we look at our own lives and the people that we're becoming and we say, maybe I could be more than this. So I look back on that moment, in that place, and who I was and how I acted. And immediately it leads me to the question, it leads you to the question, it leads us to the question, could I be different in this moment, in this place? Could I be more in this moment, in this place? It's not just a question of what we're doing, but it's a question of the people that we are and how alive we are. Like asking ourselves the question, is my heart fully alive to the plight, the heartbreak, the situation of the person who's standing in front of me? In the book of Micah, it says, so what does the Lord require of you but this, to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God? And so the idea is that God defines faith and following him by these 3 things. One, that we love it when somebody is let off the hook, when they're forgiven, and when their past stops defining their future, when the destructive cycle of their life is broken. And that we're called to act justly. So we're called to pursue justice, which is not just the punishment of those who have done wrong, but more importantly, it's about the restoration and healing of those who have been wrong. And to walk humbly with our God, to realize I am not God. But the way in which his story unfolds and the way in which it connects to my story, it makes me realize that though I am not God, that people like me and people like you are his hands and his feet, bringing hope and healing to a broken world. What is it that I have to give? What is it that is in my hands that I will part with? Because my heart is starting beating more and more in line with the way that God speaks. Urban Soul is an event happening this July where 600 young people will descend on Dublin city centre with a desire and a passion to impact communities and individuals with indiscriminate acts of kindness. What will your hands do when your heart starts to beat more and more in line with God's?